Hello and welcome to Product Popcorn, the podcast that explores topics related to product management. Most of the time. We talk with product managers and also designers and engineers that work on product teams, and only sometimes discuss the possibility of artificial intelligence taking over the world. You can always read more at productpopcorn.com. Hey everybody, welcome to Product Popcorn. I'm Kimberly and I'm a product manager.
I'm Adam and I run a therapy group for those poor souls who let their Tamagotchis die. You remember Tamagotchis?
Yes, that's so sad.
Yeah, those people who let them die, I mean, they've got like this empty part of their soul and they just got to fill it. And it's my job to fill it, you know?
Adam's a front-end developer.
I'm a front-end developer.
Oh my God, we have such an awesome episode today. We have Scott Williamson, who is a VP of product at SendGrid, and he talks about how he scaled product management at SendGrid. And he talks a lot about DX, which is developer experience, and it's really interesting. You guys should listen.
They're like regular grids, but like they send it out, right? No, that's not it at all. I'm sorry.
So before we get to Scott's interview, we have Rant, Rumor, Report.
Woo! Wait, am I supposed to do something?
No, it's not like Acronomicon.
Okay. I wasn't sure because you looked at me. You looked at me and I was like, I got to do something.
Like the expectation was weighing on you.
Yeah, no, but you're going to interject some animal noise here for us, so it's okay.
It's true. All right. The first report that I have is shout out Las Vegas. We have a bunch of new listeners out in Henderson specifically, but the Vegas area. So shout out Las Vegas. Thank you for listening. And shout out to Finland. We have a growing cohort in Finland.
Of course. I mean, can you blame them?
Finland, love your skis. Just bought some new handmade Finnish skis. They're fantastic.
I love their hot dogs.
What?
Oh, the old Finnish hot dog, as they say.
It's not a thing. All right, second report. I got a lot of feedback from my Is There Product Management in My Medicine episode from, I guess it would be 2 weeks ago by the time this is released. And I got an email specifically from a healthcare product manager, and I wanted to read a little bit of it. She does start by saying she loves the podcast, but I do need to keep her anonymous. So I'm not going to say her name or where she's from.
That's like this equivalent of saying no offense. Right? It's like,
no, she makes some good
no
points.
offense, I love the podcast, but...
No, but she makes some, she's worked for some really big healthcare companies, which I won't name, but they're pretty significant. And she says, I was listening to Dr. Mike on this podcast and my ears were ringing. There isn't a void of technology, not at all. Seriously, the challenges he's mentioned are things that we've started to think about and have been building since 2012. And we even felt back at that point, it was too late. So, she does talk about like some of the scanning technologies. She's worked on some stuff like literally very relevant to radiology, which I found pretty fantastic. She mentions when Doc Mike talked about the tech writing down, the sonogram tech writing down the numbers and then scanning them. Yeah. She says that's just twisted, especially at a, quote, state-of-the-art medical campus, unquote. And she says that
she quoted it.
Every modern-day U.S. modality exports all annotations and measurements in a standardized, discrete format, and she calls it DICOM, D-I-C-O-M. There's an acronym.
Acronomicon. I have nothing for this.
And then she notes some reasons for slow tech adaptation in the medical field. For decision support and AI solutions, there are a few open liability ends, job security issues, general distrust, but this field is marching fast and things are changing. So I think that we all agree there. So I also had a bunch of people ping me on LinkedIn and other social media outlets where they swear they can schedule online appointments with their doctor and that my doctor or doctors that I have are just super old school.
My point is Kim asked me a question of how many online doctor appointments I've made.
How many online doctor appointments have you made?
Zero. I'm sorry.
You never go to the doctor.
I mean, I do, and occasionally when I do, it's usually pretty bad.
Have you tried to schedule online appointments?
I have, and you know what? My optician.
I don't think optician is a real medical field.
What's optical?
Ophthalmologist?
Ophthalmologist. They're not an optician?
I don't have eye things. I don't know.
You don't have eyeballs?
I mean, knock on wood, I don't have glasses, so I don't go to the eye doctor.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't have glasses.
No, definitely don't.
But they've done a good job about like email marketing and be like, hey, you haven't been here in a long time. Why don't you go drop on by? And I'm like, spam folder.
Okay, great. Moving on. That was a great story, Adam.
Cool story, huh?
Yeah, great. I wanted to give an update on my Grow with Google scholarship.
Yes.
This is only a very quick update because I wrote about it pretty extensively on the blog, and we talk about it next episode.
Kim, can I ask you any CSS questions yet?
No. Next week, I promise. Next week, you can.
Next week?
Yes.
But you said you were on JavaScript stuff.
Well, I'll still remember, hopefully, some CSS stuff.
All right. So audience, she has committed to next week. I'm asking her some...
Adam wants to ask me interview questions as if I were interviewing for a job in which CSS were an important skill to have.
Like 3 questions.
Okay.
Like 2-3 questions.
We'll do next. We don't have time this week because interviews.
2, 3, 12, 17 questions.
Yes, 17 questions. Everybody will love to listen to that.
Real quick, 17 question interview that everyone wants to listen to.
But I will tell you that if you are trying to learn to code, if you're trying to learn to code for the first time, I will say that one trick that I think is really great that I've learned through doing this Udacity scholarship is that learn a markup language before you go into like a true programming language like JavaScript, because it just makes you feel a lot more comfortable with like using the code editor and like, I don't know, just writing simple code.
Like what? Like
what do you mean?
A true markup language like...
HTML and CSS. Learn a markup language before you go into a programming language like JavaScript.
Learn maybe a hypertext markup language like HTML.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what HTML stands for.
I know, Acronomicon. Great job. All right, couple more things. I also got wine store feedback. Apparently nobody has agreed with me the last 2 podcasts.
What?
Everybody's like, I can schedule my doctor's appointments online, and also the wine store, I totally go in specifically looking for a Chilean cab. I'm
really?
Like, you're a crazy person.
I just go in knowing that I want wine and not a...
Nobody else agrees with us, Adam. I know.
Oh,
I just thought, yeah, I got a lot of feedback about it.
Okay, some people know they are, and I would agree that like some product managers may like just by nature know exactly what they want when they're going into the wine store, but I don't.
No, me neither. And they also berated me for not knowing, and I did know this, I just still think it's a little disorganized, that it is organized by price because like the cheaper wines are on the bottom shelf.
Really? They say cheaper wines are generally on the bottom?
Yes.
Okay.
Generally. And still, for everybody that does disagree with me still, it was just a fun product management exercise to think about.
Yeah.
How to rearrange something that is old school and hasn't been changed.
And it is totally okay to disagree with us. Because
we love it. One more thing. 2 more things. Lies. I heard Mark Zuckerberg speak today on another podcast, and I realized I have never actually heard the man's voice. Do you know what Mark Zuckerberg sounds like?
He sounds
Can you envision his voice? Do you know what it sounds like?
Well, I mean, I saw like Social Network with Jesse Eisenberg.
That's not Mark Zuckerberg.
And he doesn't have like a high pitch.
He doesn't sound like Jesse Eisenberg. That's what I imagine his voice to sound like too, is Jesse Eisenberg because Social Network.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't sound like that.
No.
So anyway.
Okay. What does he sound like?
I'm not even going to mimic. It was on this week's episode of Freakonomics if you want to go listen to it. But I encourage everyone, just like find out what Mark Zuckerberg's voice sounds like for yourself, because it does not sound like what you think.
Like, listen to Freakonomics for about roughly like 15 seconds and then come right back.
Yeah, don't leave us.
Yeah, who needs Freakonomics, right? I mean, they only have Mark Zuckerberg as a guest.
Yeah. Small fries. Last item.
Yeah.
Episodes in the works.
Okay.
We have 2 Black Mirror episodes that we recorded a while ago that I haven't released, and I need to release them.
Okay.
So it's watching Black Mirror from a product manager's point of view.
Okay.
And dying to know what people think about that. You might hate it, and if you do, you'll let me know.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
no, but one of them, Jamie Love, who is a friend of the podcast, who has been on like 4 episodes already,
friend of the pod,
does a sweet rap.
He does. It's something to look forward to.
So yeah, he's got mad flow.
And then other upcoming episodes that we have yet to record.
Yeah.
So they're still somewhat hypothetical. We have ad tech basics for product managers. We have somebody from a big ad tech company in the Denver area coming in.
Mark Zuckerberg?
Not Mark Zuckerberg. He does not live in Denver.
Who cares about Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah,
That's what I say.
We have a PM from Pivotal coming in, and a Facebook PM. Lots of good stuff.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Write us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or somewhere else. And also, please, share this with your PM friends.
Yeah, do it.
Because we need Nothing But Cakes to sponsor us. And they'll only do it if you share this podcast with all your friends.
Otherwise, we'll find you.
No, Adam, stop threatening the people.
Sorry, I thought that was a tactic that people use.
No, it's not.
It's not a tactic people use.
Anyway, if you ever have feedback, tweet at me at Product Popcorn or email me at Kimberly@productpopcorn.com.
Woo!
Yay! Okay, let's talk to Scott now.
Okay.
Cool. Today on the pod, our guest is Scott Williamson. He is VP of Product at SendGrid.
Correct.
That's your right title? Okay. First, we'll do Acronomicon.
Acronomicon. I love how you point to me like the pro. You're a pro at this.
It's because I don't have like one of those boards that make the fun sounds. So like that's
listeners get an authentic, real-time Acronomicon growl from me every week.
It's true. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
So this is specific to Scott this week. It is DX.
Which of course stands for dysfunctional xylophone.
Yeah. Almost. It's developer experience.
Oh.
I feel like you coined this, Scott. Did you not?
I was close.
I did not coin it, but I do think we're one of the few teams that have a team called Developer Experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that further, so I don't want to explain it too much here in the Acronomicon bit because we're going to go deep.
That's good because I've never heard of it.
Well, you're a developer, so you should be super interested.
Yeah.
One more question before we're going to be talking about scaling product management today. Scott has written a 7-part series on this, and I will link to it in the show notes.
That's hefty.
I know.
Nice.
It's 7 parts. They're quick parts, and they're very succinct and very clear, but they're on the SendGrid blog, and yeah, I'll link to them. You should check them out if you are interested in going deeper in what you hear on this episode. But one more question, Scott. So I noticed there is one fun fact that I did dig up about you, which is that you went to Haas
Yes.
for your MBA. And I'm curious, as somebody who went to business school at Haas, what do you think about product people getting their MBA? I started and quit my MBA within 24 hours last week.
That is why I am laughing, because Kim did a quick trial
I tried so hard, and I was like, this is not for me. But to be fair, I wasn't at a top 10 school, which I think makes a big difference if you're like, I don't know. But I want to hear your take.
I agree. I think the pedigree matters. If it's a top 10-ish school, then the cost-benefit can pay off. If it's something below that, then the cost-benefit gets a little harder to argue, especially with for the dollars you don't earn during the time you're there. I learned a ton. I definitely think it can help. One scenario it can really help in is when you want to bridge over from another function. So if you're technical and you haven't worked and you haven't had much business experience, it can be particularly valuable for that. It can be particularly valuable if you want to, if your aim is to become a product exec. There's certainly tons of, economic and financial and frameworks that you can use that become especially valuable in product leadership. For technical PMs, maybe less important. So it just depends on the kind of product line, the kind of role you want to play.
There's so many types of PMs.
There are.
That's true. I've done a lot of interviewing other product managers about this, so that's why I'm asking you, because I'm curious of your take. And two things that I've heard, one that you mentioned, that the pedigree of the top 10 school, way more valuable than just University of Phoenix.
Yeah.
Not to knock University of Phoenix. Don't want to get sued. But and then the other is full time.
Yeah.
People that I have spoken to, and this is not necessarily everybody's experience, but they found that if they could really focus full time on their MBA, that helped them get connections and the networking, and just that focus was more useful than doing, say, a professional MBA where you're doing it part time for several years.
I agree. Being able to dive into it matters. You learn more. Your network is stronger. And I've observed a lot of people do part-time MBAs, and if you can do it, great. They just seem stressed out for 4 years.
I know, right? That's why I quit. I was like, oh, God. And then thinking about I could spend this time learning, more technical skills, and that seemed so much more valuable to me just, because I can't quit my job to do it full-time.
Especially since you have this gift of the Udacity
It's true.
scholarship.
Thank you, girl.
She got a
Google.
Udacity scholarship for this, and that's nice. That's nice to have.
I'm on JavaScript. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Let's start out. I just, if you want to give your quick overview of what SendGrid is and what you do.
You bet. SendGrid's an email communication platform. Company's going on its 9th year. The original core product was built for developers, by developers. It's an email service that you can plug onto an app or a website. It makes it very easy to enable our customers to communicate with their end users. And so, Uber, Airbnb, Spotify, Pandora are some of the big brands that use it. And so that's the core business. We call it email infrastructure. 2 years ago, we decided to go into an adjacency for email marketing. So if you're a marketing professional and you need to send email communications out to a list of folks, we have an app that you can store your list, segment your list, create your content. It goes out on top of our email infrastructure platform. And so think of it like an app tailor-made for email marketers on top of our infrastructure. Our longer-term vision is to add additional channels of communication. For example, perhaps display advertising would be a good next step for us. So,
Oh, awesome.
So picture multiple apps for marketers on top of an infrastructure to enable you to communicate in a bunch of different ways with your customers.
Who are your main competitors, just so we can get a vibe?
On the email infrastructure side, Amazon has a service called Amazon Simple Email Service.
Freaking Amazon.
Never
man.
heard of 'em.
Every time.
But they've been in our space for 5-6 years.
Oh, wow.
And so we've got clear positioning against them, and it hasn't hurt our entry into the market. I think if anything, it validated it. And there's a couple other companies. One's called Mailgun. Another one is called SparkPost.
Okay.
Are the top 3 on email infrastructure. If you're talking about email marketing, it's MailChimp, ExactTarget, Campaign Monitor.
ConvertKit, is that one that's kind of up and coming?
There's several hundred email marketing
Okay.
platforms, and so there's a lot of fragmentation in this space.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I've really only heard of MailChimp.
Yeah.
Me too, yeah. And it's because they integrate with, I use Squarespace, so.
Yeah.
They have an amazing brand, and so they've done well from a brand marketing perspective.
But we're not marketing MailChimp here.
Not at all.
No.
I actually don't like their product. Ew, crap. I just, whatever I say, I'm just gonna get sued left and right here. No. Great, awesome. So scaling product management. So it sounds like, when did you come on to SendGrid? I think it was 2012. Do I remember?
2013.
2013?
I'm in my 5th year.
Okay. And when you came on, how big was the team?
The team was 3 product owners reporting into a VP of marketing.
Wow.
And so there hadn't been a product leader there yet. I was the first product leader. There had been a few product owners, I would call them. They were engineering facing and didn't really work together at the time. They were pretty much assigned to engineering teams. And we're very focused on Scrum process and Agile and that kind of thing.
Did they talk to customers?
Not much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now how many PMs do you have?
Now there's 23 folks on the team plus
Wow!
23?
Now,
that's crazy.
Not all are pure product managers. There's about 15 that are classic product managers and or leaders of product managers, director types. There are 2 pricing folks.
Okay.
There's 4 people in developer experience, which we'll talk about.
Okay.
There are a couple that are data scientists.
Oh, wow.
And 1 services product manager.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not like an economist, but I feel like that's some solid growth.
Yeah. So it's been an amazing chance to build out a team and build out some of these adjacent functions that have a lot of synergy with PM that may not always reside within PM.
Great.
Okay.
So you wrote a 7-part series on this, and we're not going to touch on all 7 parts, but before we get into DX, which is kind of the main thing I want to talk about, I just want to hit on 3 other specific topics you talk about. And the first is like growing a team. So what's important as you scale? Obviously tons of things, but like, are there any highlights that you would hit on?
Yeah, a few things. One is know what ratio is going to be optimal and stick to that. Get support for that. Ours is approximately 1 product manager to 1 designer to 1 product marketer to 1 engineering manager to 6 or 7 devs.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we found if we stray from that and you stretch, like if you don't have enough PMs or you don't have enough designers, you get bottlenecks in those areas that cause the quality of work to diminish or the pace of work to slow down.
Yeah.
But lots of teams, lots of companies tend to underinvest in things like product management and or design, in which case you get this dynamic where there's way more devs than there are designers and PMs, and the quality of thought going into the work that you ask them to do drops a ton. Mm-hmm. So try to get the ratios right. Try to get buy-in to have that healthy ratio, and you'll be much better off.
I really like that because Adam, I'm sure you have too. Like we've worked on teams where the ratio is just kind of all over the place, and like you have some teams that have 3 PMs per 5 developers, other teams that have 1 PM per 25 developers.
Yep. Yeah, I've been on that exact ratio that you literally just mentioned.
1 to 25.
And it can be rough at that ratio,
Because, devs have questions and they need feedback. And if they, they're all kind of, I don't want to say fighting over the PM, but if they don't have enough of the PM's time, they're just going to kind of YOLO make up what they need clarification on.
Yeah, and if you have someone like me who's this weird like designer dev hybrid, they ask you questions that you have no idea of the answers for. And you guys gotta be like, you know what? That sounds good. Let's do that.
I can't help you with that problem, but no, that's a really good. So defining the ratio and then sticking with it. Yep. I like it.
And then the next tip would be hire well.
Yeah.
And as the manager of the team, as the hiring manager, you got to put a lot of energy into that. A few tips. You want to write out the job description in advance. Know exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this a senior person? Is this a junior person? Do they need domain experience or not? What do you want? And then stay true to that. Don't compromise just to fill a seat. Don't compromise just to ease pain, because you'll have much more pain in the long run if you hire the wrong person. I spend up to 25% of my time with hiring stuff.
Wow.
Which is a ton.
So time consuming.
That is a lot.
But that's what it takes to get people in, do a bunch of interviews, get a team around you to help you interview, debrief right away. If you're selective and you have a high bar, it can take a long time.
I think a lot of times, like the emphasis on the importance of hiring is kind of lost. And I recently read there was a Medium article, and I think it was from a product director at Facebook, said that you should manage. Oh, whiskey's open.
Yeah. Did you hear the boom?
It's a little quiet.
Anyway, the point of the article, or the point she was trying to make, was that you should manage your culture like a product.
Yeah.
And I think that hiring is kind of an important part of that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that cultural team cohesion, you're not going to build anything awesome, right?
Yeah. And you guys who have experienced a lot of growth recently, I can imagine that's like
It's very hard to hold your culture. You know, when I joined, we were 140. We're 440 now.
Wow. Yeah.
And but SendGrid has the most explicit culture I've ever been in. It's called the 4 H's: hungry, humble, happy, honest.
Ooh, I like that. Whoa,
Man,
say it one more time.
You were on that.
I want to see.
I better not forget.
I want to see if I can repeat it back. Hungry, humble, honest. Oh crap, I'm missing one. Hungry, humble, honest,
Happy.
happy. Oh, very important.
Yeah.
Happiness.
And so put the 4 together. It's an interesting combo. Some of them have, hungry. You don't always find people that are hungry and humble.
Yeah.
So to find that find that combo in a human, it doesn't exist all the time.
That's so true.
And so we've, through 3 CEOs and through tons of growth, it's remained really tangible.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I've been there 5 years. It's a tangible, awesome culture. But you have to hire for it. You have to look for it. You have to screen for it.
Yeah.
Sure. Anything else about growing a team before we move to the next
I would
one?
make one other point, which is that you can also be explicit about whether you want people from the outside or the inside. I'm kind of like, do you want to hire the skills or do you want to grow the skills? We brought in about 4 or 5 people, so roughly a third of the PMs from other functions. So support has been a good one for us. People who know the customer, who have a real interest in improving the product line. They have inside baseball in the company that can be valuable. They know the tech. They might not know the PM skills, but they know the company. You can augment that with people from the outside who don't know the company but know the function of PM. Pair them together. It's a pretty nice combo. And then get people up and down the spectrum. Some seniors, some junior. They play off each other. The junior people learn from the senior. The senior people get juice from being able to coach. It's a nice combo when you can get people along that ladder.
Yeah. I like that. I like it when a company not only just hires externally but does promote from within too. I think it's kind of a trend in tech to just like hire from the outside and like everybody's moving all the time, but sometimes that like internal knowledge isn't valued as much as I think it should be.
I think there's like a little more fiscal like value to that, like someone who knows a product, who has been there for so many years, and rewarding that person for staying with the company that long, especially when you have like turnover, the tech turnover, especially like not just in Denver but in general, is like pretty hefty.
Yeah, it can be intense. All right, next, so maturing the product planning process. Whew, it's a lot of alliteration. Let me say that again. Maturing the product planning process.
Nice.
And you say this can be or actually I think these are my thoughts that I've written down. This can be a tricky one because I've seen a lot of product managers who are really obsessed with process. And like, as we grow, we need to have our process in place. But really, like, for my opinion of this, and I'm curious if you agree, is like, the process should be about making things just easier for everybody and should be minimal. Like if you have to refer to a complicated Confluence page to figure out what you need to do next, it's probably too much. So what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, well, growing from 3 to 23 people, that's just in product. There's been similar growth in design, engineering. That's a ton of Scrum teams.
Yeah.
And at SendGrid, we happen to have a lot of technical dependencies between them.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we were trying to optimize for when we came up with the way we do it is we needed a way for the teams to deal with dependencies and for one team to know what another one's doing. If you have a full stack team where you're in complete control of your own destiny, then you might come up with a different system than we did. But we needed something where we could coordinate across 15 plus Scrum teams and avoid dependency train wrecks deep in projects.
Yeah.
So it may be a little heavier than you would ideally like, but that's we tried to optimize for something that we thought was a net benefit to the process. Because what we were getting was, okay, everybody's running their own train. It's super light. Just do whatever you want. And then 90% of the way through, they'd realize, oh, shit, I got 3 teams I depend on.
Yeah.
And they're not ready for me. And then the thing drags out, and it's very frustrating for all involved.
Yeah.
We were optimizing for trying to solve that. If you don't have that, maybe you can run leaner.
Mm-hmm.
Our particular process is quarterly. We want to sort of a forcing functions for teams to be at a certain point in the planning process for the following quarter.
Yeah.
So that when we get to it, we know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like after 1 month, the PM should have a real solid list of the opportunities. At the end of the second month, we should have a pretty good idea of what dependencies are involved. And then a couple weeks before, we should have a good idea of capacity. Do the teams have capacity to support one another?
Yeah.
So it's a series of meetings. It takes on the order of hours talking to each other. The planning within teams adds up to more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue the teams are much more efficient with it than without.
Yeah, definitely.
So you just have to make a judgment on what you're trying to solve for and avoid dependencies that are sneaky costly.
Yeah, sneaky dependencies. Oh gosh, it's hard to account for all of them all the time, I find.
It is.
It's like more of an art than a science at times.
I think people want to feel like they're moving fast.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you move too fast in the planning process, there's delays later that don't get accounted for that actually slow you down more than you think.
Yeah.
Then if you initially
people
had
get
planned
really
for it.
upset about the tax of planning.
Yeah.
And I get it because it's kind of painful and you're doing it. But what I think is underestimated on a lot of product teams is how inefficient things are later on that you could have fixed if you planned it right.
Yeah,
So
that's a really good point.
Yeah, that takes some experience because there's no immediate result or return on that when you're planning.
You don't necessarily associate that crappy delay to something that you missed in planning.
Yeah.
But when you look at it over the period of several years, as I've been able to do, you can see just how much noise there is, how many fires are there that I have to put out, and the number of fires is like way lower.
It's great perspective.
Yeah.
I really like that. Awesome. And the next quick hit before we move on to DX is investing in customer validation. So what does that look like at SendGrid?
We have, at a high level, 4 steps that we want a product concept to go through. Problem validation, solution validation, build, and launch.
Okay.
Problem validation is a stage where the PM, we ask them to talk to at least 10 customers.
Okay.
And you're not bringing a solution. You're just asking them about their problem. It's similar in spirit to a jobs to be done interview.
Right.
Where you're trying to get in the head of that. You're trying to understand who's this user, what problem do they have, why should we solve this for them, what's the upside to the company, how would we take it to market. We ask the PMs to fill out this thing called an opportunity canvas. It's 1 page. It's got 7 or 8 different questions we ask them to answer, plus a little press release, sort of an Amazon style.
I really like
release.
that. Okay.
So it's 1 page. It's easy to digest. It's kind of pithy, You got to come up with a meaningful title. It's very problem oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Do you what's the are you like interviewing an actual customer, like one per one?
Well, it could be a prospective customer. It could be a current customer. It could be a
10
customer,
customers.
10 people.
Okay.
And usually these are remote, like, web meetings
sure.
or whatever. But we're talking to humans.
Okay.
Interviews. It takes time. But what we want to see is that the PM has a really strong grasp of who's the user, the problem, why should we solve this, do we have risks and dependencies, can we take it to market? You want all that stuff to line up. So many projects go forward without that stuff being clear.
I totally agree.
And then you run into all these headaches like,
the customer doesn't want this.
Our sales channel can't sell it. Or
right.
the problem isn't acute. Or we don't know how to talk to the market about this. Like there's no so what. If you can answer all that before you move forward, you're way ahead of the game. So that's the first piece of customer validation we ask them to do. If that gets a green light, then they go talk to another 10 with a solution to the problem.
Oh.
So this
different 10 or the original 10?
Could be the original 10 if they
Okay.
still want to talk. Could be another set that's still the same target user.
Okay.
And we'll put a prototype or an API spec or something, usually a clickable prototype if it's visual. So the PM pairs with the designer for this phase.
Nice.
And so at the end of that, you know the user, you know the problem, and you're pretty sure you got a good solution to it. Then you go build it, work with engineering, break it down into 2-week sprints and all that.
Right.
And then you launch.
I really like this approach too because, obviously PMs, a big part of our job is to talk to customers, but to say specifically like talk to 10 and then come back and talk to 10. It gives like very clear outline and boundaries of like what the expectation is.
Talk to 10 customers.
Right.
And so we could do a whole podcast on at least one on moderation and bias and avoiding bias and moderation.
These are really real skills.
Yeah, it's an art. It's an art. It's an art form.
And when we were at Rocky Mountain Product Camp, which Scott and I were both there with Brian Ray, friend of the pod, who did Jobs to Be Done episode. If you haven't listened, please go back. It's a great episode. But he did a demo of this Jobs to Be Done interview. And I don't know if your PMs do that. It's just one way to do these customer interviews, but really great format and just, consistent format to do this kind of thing. But yeah, we could do multiple episodes, I think, on customer interview tactics. We'll have to mark that down, Adam. Awesome. So I want to move on to the 7th and last post in your Scaling Product Management series, which you call Developer Experience. So what is DX?
DX is a brother, sister to UX, user experience.
Okay.
Very similar in spirit. It's just the target is developer. Okay. UX is often conflated with UI, with an experience of web experience or mobile experience, something that you're visually seeing, moving through an app. DX is the same idea, but it recognizes that developers are way different. They want to interact with your product in different ways. Like they're probably going to interact with an API rather than a UI.
Yep.
Right.
They like docs. They don't like to call into support.
Okay.
They like things that are easy to get started.
Yep.
They want to test your stuff before they use it. And so it's about engineering and experience from what you tell them on the website all the way through to implementing it that is friendly to them. And most UX teams don't think that way. They're targeting more of a sort of a visual user experience.
Right.
And so it's an acknowledgement that many of our customers are developers. They have a specific way they want to interact with us. They have specific expectations. And so we built a little team to go try to build the best developer experience we could.
Got it. Awesome. What have been some challenges in trying to do that? Did you... First off, let me ask, where did you get this idea? Was it from another company or did you read about it?
Yeah, Twilio is kind of a pioneer in this space. They have a good they have a good DX team too.
Okay.
You know, Google, some of the bigger developer-facing companies have done this. Not all of them call it that.
I love this whole DX term. It's
Yeah.
It's
It's pretty
I feel
catchy,
like
right?
an insider just using the word DX.
I really like it too. Yeah.
SendGrid has long had a team called, we used to call it developer relations. We now call it community development.
Okay.
These are people who go out and they make friends with developers. They wear the blue SendGrid shirts.
Yeah.
Ooh.
At conferences, they go pitch the product. They do not have a quota, but they're out there shaking hands with developers, building the brand like one developer at a time.
And when you
Yeah.
say developers, you mean developers that are using the SendGrid product.
Or could
Yeah.
be. Like
Or
they'll
could
show
be,
up
yeah.
at a hackathon or we do a lot with incubators and
Mm-hmm.
emerging tech companies and let them know that SendGrid's available and help them integrate and run workshops, that kind of thing. So we've long had a team called developer relations or community development.
Yeah.
And that's where some of this kind of got incubated.
Mm-hmm.
But then we decided we wanted to make it part of the product team.
Yeah.
So that
Which it makes
not
sense
just-
because they're users, right? They're just
Right.
different kind of user.
Yeah.
So a lot of the kind of care and passion and energy that developer relations team had, we pulled directly into the product team so that we could take some of the things we were learning from being side by side with developers into the product.
Okay.
And so we have three things we were trying to drive. One was the API spec itself, trying to drive API consistency
Yeah.
and have an API that developers would immediately love and resonate with.
Okay.
So we had an API product manager who owns that spec across everything.
Is that product manager an engineer or have a technical background?
Yeah, he's a former developer.
Okay.
He was part
Perfect.
of this developer relations team.
You would assume that person probably should have a technical background, but I was just curious.
They
Yeah.
have
Well,
to.
I mean, it would give them insight into like how to leverage certain tools.
Well,
part
and
of
if you've never been a user of an API,
yeah,
it would be hard to have that user perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know?
I think a good API PM or DX PM has to have been a developer at some point.
Agreed.
Maybe not their entire career, but they have to have been at one point to have
sure.
the kind of insight that you want.
Yeah.
The second piece is docs. So we have
Ooh.
a couple of writers, one of whom is fully dedicated to technical docs, API docs. And so in combination with that API product manager, figured out like the right layout and the right ways to test an integration directly through the docs, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Are you consistent with the way you write your API documentation for all of your APIs?
We try to be, yeah.
Yeah. It is a challenge. I there's one API that I own at my current job, and it's rewriting that API documentation has definitely been a challenge for me this year. But I find that when it is in order, it makes your life a lot easier.
And
Well, it's like that thing that's like it doesn't have like the immediate tangible like benefit. It's
Right.
Yeah, it's like that investment in the future there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as soon as you onboard one new customer that's using that API, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
the difference between 10 hours of hand-holding to absolutely no issues.
Nothing, yeah,
No bumps in the
yeah.
road.
a lot of developers make a judgment on what they're going to buy based on the docs. Does the API look good?
That's true.
And our docs are our representation of the API in writing. And so they can pull it up and immediately say, oh, yeah, that looks modern. That looks easy to use.
All
So
my
it's,
initial questions are answered, like
It's
right off the bat.
oftentimes a buying criteria checklist. Like, do they know what they're doing?
Yeah, that's it's how thorough they've thought through their product, and how it will be
Yeah.
leveraged by outside parties. And I think that is the mindset of the developer. And to have thorough documentation up front is pretty amazing.
Because you're right, they do not want to call and chat and talk to anybody. They just want to have their answers there.
That's right. They don't want to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And then the third area is open source libraries for integration. So if you're building your app in Ruby or PHP or Java or whatever, C#, we have libraries that can bridge between our product and your language. And so it makes integration really quick.
Yeah.
And we've done this through an open source approach. So all these libraries are available as open source libraries. And we get a ton of contributions from the community. We just did Hacktoberfest. Have you heard of this?
Yep.
This is an open source thing where lots of tech companies try to get open source contributions going. We were number 4 behind Google, Facebook, and Microsoft.
What?
Wow!
That's awesome.
It's because we have a dedicated team, and they were out there, trying to work with the community. We got something like 7 years worth of work done from the community because they just contributed it on their own time.
A lot of teams aren't leveraging that community involvement. That's great.
And so the combination of a clean API, good docs, and open source libraries has been really strong.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow.
Open source is powerful.
Well, I know. It's just
but you have to commit to it because we need full-time people to deal with it. You have to respond to if they make a pull request, you gotta respond to it in a reasonable amount of time.
I was going to say the number of PRs alone is like a developer at least.
And so we have a dedicated developer experience engineer who's out there pulling them in, making sure they work. And it's just it's a full-time job.
I can imagine, yeah.
I've used libraries that are like one developer, who done the whole thing, and I'm like trying to do a PR into their library, and you're like, it's gonna be like
7 days,
weeks to get that in.
Wow. What are the challenges that you found trying to implement this DX into SendGrid, into the team? Or
I think one challenge is it's difficult to tie it to ROI.
Okay.
These things are subtle.
So how did you get whoever makes the financial decisions, which you obviously probably have some weight in that, but how did you convince others who are making financial decisions in the company that this was worth the investment?
Well, one of our top 4 company metrics that we track is NPS. And so
Acronomicon.
Yeah, Net Promoter Score.
Oh, duh. We knew that one.
and so as a company, that's important to us. And so that's a clear tie. Like if you do things that developers love, they're going to have higher NPS, and that leads to them referring it to other people. So I think it's pretty obvious that if you nail the developer experience, it leads to good things in terms of referrals and new signups. But it's impossible to tie it to a specific piece of work. So you have to have company buy-in that the user experience is important, that NPS is important, and so we tied it to that. Like, this is going to help with that. Trust us.
Trust us. Awesome. I mean, it seems to be working very well, so that's great. Awesome. Do you have any final words of wisdom?
I think the way you had framed it in the lead up to this, which I liked, was advice for people who are on growing teams or want to be on growing teams. What advice do I have? I think one is, if you're looking for a job, look for the best possible system and manager you can find.
Yes. Your manager is your number one the number one factor that determines your happiness at work.
That's definitely true. And if you get in a system where you learn the right habits, your projects are going to be more successful. Mm-hmm. You're going to get on better projects. Yeah. You're going to learn more. You're going to develop faster. You're going to be better prepared for the next job. Yep. If you get in a system where you learn the wrong shit, your projects are going to tank. It's going to be harder to convince the next hiring manager that you're good. It's just either you're in a positive cycle or you're in a negative cycle. So if you're look for a good system and a good manager. 2, along the way, have a growth mindset. PM is moving so fast, and you got to be trying to learn all the time. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably want to learn, so you're in good shape. But have a growth mindset, because if you're on top of your game, if you're doing things as best you can, then you'll be more successful and good things will happen. And then the last one is keep the customer at the center. In scaling environments, things get wobbly, things
Yeah.
get chaotic. People start making decisions based on what they think is best for internal reasons. And the bigger your team gets, the easier it is to get disconnected from the customer.
It's
Like if
so true.
If you got 20 PMs and 100 engineers, you have to push hard to get them to actually talk to customers because it's easy to get disconnected. When you're early and it's the founder and 3 people, you're kind of out there and you're close to it. But when you scale, the org tends to get further away, and you have to fight that hard.
You have to make it such a priority
If
to
you're-
like constantly customer test.
If you're a manager, force it. If you're an individual contributor and your system doesn't demand it, do it anyway, because your projects will be much better off for it. You'll have a much better chance of having a successful project if you're tuned into the customer and not internal gut. I've seen so many bad decisions made just because, it feels right.
Yes, it is amazing because you hear so much hype about like data-driven decision making, and
but nobody wants to do it.
Nobody does it, or I shouldn't say nobody.
Or
does.
maybe they'll use data. It'll be one call with one
Right.
customer or one thing they heard that makes sense on its own. But when you dig in, it's oftentimes much more complicated than that.
And it's that bias. Like Shutterstock has done a lot of refocus on like really like intensive customer focus decisions, right? And you're like, you'll test something against a customer and you're like, holy crap, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And it's because you're so internally like biased towards your product that you can skip over some of the really things that should be blaring, right, to you. So
those are great final words, Scott. Such words of wisdom.
Yeah, you had several points of that final word. That was great.
That's a podcast in itself. No, we know any friend of Brian Ray is a friend of the pod. So, see? Well, thank you so much, Scott, for coming on. This was fantastic, and we'll have to have you back on.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks
great.
for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back next week. See you later. Bye. Thanks for listening to Product Popcorn. You can subscribe to the podcast or leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. You can always read more at productpopcorn.com or follow us on Twitter at Product Popcorn.